Hi, I'm Geraldine Ryan-Lush, and for a while now, for about a month or so, I have been presenting my work and reading some excerpts from my books as a service to all the people that are home because of this COVID-19 crisis, all the children that are home, and I hope that my efforts and my readings and my talks have been of some benefit and some happiness and joy and help to some of the children with their school projects and a form of literacy to get them into reading and to appreciate reading and books more, and that they will have a good experience at home. I know there's lots of things they can do, but books to me are the most fascinating of all. You can never be bored when you have a good book, that's for sure. I'm going to talk, in fact I'm going to read an excerpt from this book. I talked about it before in another video, but I'm going to read an excerpt from it this evening. Firstly I'm going to read an excerpt from a review that was written by Reader's Favorite, which is a review source affiliated with the American Library Association. This book has just come out in a new print run, and this is the new cover. I don't have the actual print book yet, it's on the way, but I can show you the new cover. This is the new cover for the Gravel Pit Kids. I like it. I like both of them. They each have their own special appeal, but I think I like that one better. But of course, like the old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. However, it's a nice cover. And now I will read from the book, or read from one of the reviews of the book, which was written by Jack Magnus from Reader's Favorite. Geraldine Ryan-Lush's coming of age novel, The Gravel Pit Kids, is a grand and glorious story about two youngsters and the enduring friendship they share. As I read, I couldn't help but think of the famous narrator, of that famous friendship between Twain's Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, while I was also reminded of the youthful narrator in Robertson Davis' The Fifth Business. Yes, that is high praise indeed, but well merited by this powerful and unforgettable tale about friendship, loyalty, and social pressures. There are humorous episodes, such as when David fakes incipient blindness to get out of solving a math equation on the chalkboard in class, and powerful moments like his solo day's long journey back to Brookings to find out if his friend was still alive. The Gravel Pit Kids is a poignant and moving novel that transcends age limitations, and I would not hesitate to recommend it for those adults who still remember what it was like to be young, as well as those who would like to remember once more. The Gravel Pit Kids is most highly recommended. Now there's more at the beginning. He summarizes the novel. It's about friendship between two boys. One is bullied and tortured by other people that he was around the area. The characters are David Fuller and Kenny Finney. David is the better off kid who's friends with Kenny Finney, the disadvantaged boy. So he lives in a trailer, in a trailer park, a tumble-down trailer, and he doesn't have very good at all. So they're really good friends, and then David has to move, and his parents are bothered by the fact that Kenny is not really good enough to be friends with their son. So there's a social stigma there, as well as a societal stigma from the residents of the community and in the school. So anyway, after a while, David's mother gets fed up with what to her is not the kind of environment she wants David to grow up in. So they decide to move. She and his father decide to move to a bigger city where she figures there's more advantages. However, David experiences a lot of problems in the big city. Being bullied, loneliness, and a general distancing from his parents. And he suffers, his grades suffer in school and so on. In the midst of all this, he misses Kenny a lot, and he doesn't know what's going on with him. Then a fire happens in Kenny's house, tragedy happens, and all of Kenny's family perish in the fire. So David finds out about this just by accidentally seeing it in the newspaper. And his family just make light of the matter and say, well, it's too bad, but, we have our own life and we have to get on with our lives. So, you can't do anything about it. And it's kind of a blasé attitude. However, David, he's not going to let it go like that. He wants to help Kenny and he worries about him. And so one day he decides to take off. And because the way he looks at it, nobody cares if Finney lives or dies. He's out there in this community hours away, and who cares? That's the way he looks at it. So he figures, well, I myself am going to do this, and I'm going to run away and see if I can find him. And the name of the community where they had lived is Brookings. So he wants to get back to Brookings and find Kenny dead or alive. So I will read the synopsis of the story on the back to give you a better idea of the total plot. David Fuller's only best friend, Kenny Finney, is a smelly outcast who can't read or write, steals, lives in a gravel pit trailer home, and gets caught by the cops all the time. But he plays the best game of street hockey ever, and would face any ghost in the coastal community of Brookings. And he would give you his heart if he could. One day, David's life changes, and he says goodbye to Kenny Finney and the carefree life he's known. His parents are moving to a better life, and want him away from the unsuitable Finneys. They want better for him than a snot-nosed juvenile delinquent who can only be a bad influence. Then tragedy strikes. Kenny's house out in Brookings burns down, and his family, or most of his family, are dead. No one knows where Kenny is, or no one really cares. A determined 12-year-old boy with pain and hope in his heart takes it upon himself to travel hundreds of miles alone to find, dead or alive, the street kid nobody wanted, and whose tragic plight awakens a startling awareness. So this is the plot on the back of the book. So I'm going to read a portion of the section where he's getting ready to go, to run away. I sat up in bed. My heart was beating fast. I was sure Mom and Dad could hear it. I had been having a nightmare. Kenny and I were running through a real thick forest, and Mario and Stefan and a whole gang from Brookings were after us. They had hold of Kenny and were dragging him away. "You'll never see him again," they shouted. As they dragged Kenny, they were looking back and laughing and pointing. I tried to run after them, but the woods were too thick and the trees were too huge. All of a sudden, the leaves on the ground turned to quicksand, and I was sinking further and further down. There was no getting out, and I could hear Kenny yelling for me to come and get him. But I couldn't move. I was drowning in slimy grey mud, but he was still there, standing by the tin chimney of the burning trailer home, smoke and flames trapping him. When I came awake, I was exhausted and I could hear myself yelling. I clapped my hands over my mouth in case Mom and Dad could hear. Then it hit me that I was supposed to go and find Kenny. I crept up to the kitchen. The digital clock on the microwave showed 6:10 a.m. I knew I had to hurry before Dad got up at 7. I took a long gulp of milk from the container in the fridge and stuffed some things into my pockets. Clancy was following me around, whining and sniffing my duffel bag. Sorry, fella, I told him. This is one time I can't take you. You be a good sport now and don't rat on me, will you? Clancy panted excitedly and jumped up, almost smothering me with wet kisses. Stay, sit, I told him, pointing at the floor. He knew I meant business then, and he just sat there, watching me and wagging his tail. I took a blue post-it note from the notepad by the phone and stuck it on the fridge. I didn't know what to say, but I knew I couldn't go without saying something. I didn't want him to think I was doing this to be rebellious or hard to handle or to cause him stress. And it wasn't like I was going to be gone for very long or something. Gone to find Kenny, I finally put down. Don't worry, love, David. I wriggled into my parka then, grabbed my duffel bag and took off out the door. I thought about catching the first Metro bus to Mount Pearl Square, where the DRL coach line was stopping at 9:30, but I figured by the time I got down Cowan Avenue and across Hamlin Road and the parking lot to the mall where the bus shelter was, I was just as well walking out Topsail Road to Mount Pearl Square instead. It was the same amount of time, and I wouldn't have to deal with a stern-looking bus driver looking at me suspiciously. After all, what was a kid my age doing, jumping on the Metro bus all by himself at 7 a.m.? I could see why he would be suspicious. I had a feeling I wouldn't get away with it. I may not get away with it on the DRL bus either, but that one was headed out of town, and I hoped there would be tourists and travellers among the crowd getting on. I hoped there would be kids around my own age that I could mingle in with, so the driver wouldn't notice I was travelling alone. I started down Cowan Avenue, lugging my sports bag. When I had to cross over on the Topsail Road, heading west, as I watched for the walk sign to flash, people in cars stared at me. But I kept going. I had to. My mind was made up now. The traffic was getting heavier. No one my age was walking out Topsail Road at that hour of the morning. I hadn't been walking all that far, but I was starting to sweat, and I felt a little scared. I couldn't wait to get up the incline to Mount Pearl Square and wait in Tim Hortons until it was time to board the DRL. At least that was my plan. But when I got inside Tim Hortons, I almost chickened out. I bought a milk and a chocolate muffin, but I couldn't relax, with the two middle-aged waitresses gawking at me. There were only 2 more customers there. All the rest were drive-thrus. And I knew the waitresses were only staring at me out of curiosity and concern. But I didn't want concern right now. I just wanted to be left alone to do what I had to do. Finally, the place started to fill up with working people grabbing coffee to take to their cars while they drove to work, and the 2 waitresses seemed to forget I was there. It was a long wait. They started looking at me again, and when one came over towards me, I took off out through a side door and ducked in behind a building where the dumpsters were. After what seemed like forever, I decided to go over to the spot in front of the main entrance to Zeller's, where I knew the DRL stopped to take on passengers. When I got there, a small crowd was starting to gather. The bus was leaving at 9:30. There were a few adults there with caps and hats and cameras on their shoulders, tourists like I had hoped. I edged in among them, hoping the bus driver wouldn't notice I was travelling alone. Finally, the big blue and white bus stopped, and everyone rushed up to it. I stepped on with the tourists and bought my ticket. The bus driver glanced at me, and I got a bit nervous, but one of the tourists started asking him all kinds of questions. So I sneaked to a seat before he had time to notice me again. I knew that once he noticed me, really noticed me, he would be sure to do something. Call the police or something. I left the seat I was in and found one way back to the bus. When I caught my breath and started to relax, I glanced at the ticket I had bought. $35 for one way to Brookings. I had only taken $45 with me, the total amount I had saved for a collector comic. That left only $10 for snacks and a present for Kenny, if I found him alive, that is. I shook when I thought of the other possibility. Imagine him lying dead somewhere. Bits of that horrible dream came flashing through my mind. I bit my lip and stared out the window. I had come this far and I had my ticket. I was still sweating from all the clothes and from being too tense, and I was starting to get a god-awful pain in my stomach. But there was nothing I could do about that now, only suffer it out. I wouldn't dare move off that seat, even though there was still time for me to go across to Tim Hortons and use the washroom. I just wanted that DRL to hurry up and get on the road before Dad or the bus driver or the police or somebody found me. Then I would really be in for it, and I could say goodbye to finding Kenny forever. "Hey, kid, wake up. Is this where you get off?" A man was shaking me gently. He was one of the tourist men with the hat and the camera. For a few seconds I didn't know where I was. I must have been asleep for a long time this time. I had been drifting in and out since we left St. John's. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and looked around. The passengers were standing by their seats, scrambling for their things. "Is this Brookings?" I asked the tourist guy. To tell the truth, I was a little scared. It was pitch dark. I had never been on such a long bus ride before. And I had heard enough stories from Aunt Angie when she got started about people falling asleep and getting off in the wrong places and getting stranded and all that. I didn't want to make a mistake and have it happen to me. "This is Brookings Station," the guy answered, meaning it was where the buses arrived and departed for the Brookings area. My legs were pins and needles, and I felt cold and tired and hungry. It was supposed to be a 6-hour drive, but with all the stops the driver made, picking up passengers and dropping them off, it was more like 8 or forever. I felt in my parka pocket to make sure the $10 was still there, and the Don Cherry book for Kenny I had shoved in at the last minute while I rushed from the house. I wanted to buy him something new as well. There was a convenience store across the road. Maybe I would find something there. The tourist guy was looking at me again, a little more cautiously, curiously this time. "Somebody meeting you?" he asked. He was looking at me in the same way the two waitresses had looked at me. My stomach was starting to pain again. I brushed past him real quickly and caught up with the last of the passengers on the steps of the bus. "Oh yeah, somebody's meeting me at the store," I mumbled, hoping he couldn't make out what I said. I took off then, behind all the people who were heading for the store. Mag's Mug Up, the store was called. I believe I was there once before, on the way somewhere with Dad, but it must have been a long time ago, because I couldn't remember anything about it, only the name. All of a sudden I heard something on the radio the driver had on up over his seat. A big loud announcement about a missing young boy from St. John's, name of David Fuller, believed to be heading towards the Brookings area. The tourist guy gave a yell. "Hey you, kid, come back here. Is your name David? Hey everyone, he's a runaway. The cops are looking for him." I jumped off the steps in a flash. I took off, running as fast as I could go in the dark and rain, until I was sure I was no longer in view of the bus or the convenience store. I ran till I was beat into the woods and flopped down in a boggy path off the highway with soggy green moss. I was terrified. The guide said the police were after me. And I was more terrified of the police catching me and Dad's anger and Mom's tight-faced humiliation and the cops putting me in jail than I was of the woods right now. They used to catch Kenny and his brothers back in Brookings, but didn't put them in jail. That was because they pitied them. They probably wouldn't pity me, just say I was incorrigible. It got really dark, black as pitch. I could hear weird animal sounds, and a thought came that there were bears out this way, big bears, big and hungry, and not just bears, coyotes, wolves, lynx that sprang from the trees and tore your throat out. I felt like throwing up with fear, as every sound I heard seemed like a bear or a coyote or a lynx. My heart was pounding. I wanted to scream out. I was lost, but I knew I couldn't keep going. Mom had told the story once of a teacher she had who got lost in the woods. He panicked and kept going around and around in circles until he died. If he had stayed in the one place, she said, and rested and waited for help, he probably would have survived. I was too tired now to move anyway. I tied my hood under my chin. I planned to stay here until daybreak. Then suddenly I realized I had left my duffel bag in the bin on the bus when I took off. I had no water or raisins or flashlights or matches. I started to panic. Damn radio announcers. Mom and Dad had wasted no time. But I knew I wasn't far from the highway. It was going to be a long, terrifying night. And that's part of, I guess you could say, the climax of the story, where he runs away and tries to find Kenny, dead or alive, his friend. I had been looking forward to doing some school visits and readings this spring and summer, schools and libraries, reading from this book and some more of my books. But I decided, well, you know, that's along with along with a lot of other people. I had to make the best of it, and you know, probably reach people through YouTube, a vehicle for at least letting people know of my work and sharing some of my work with you. So I hope you get a chance. Like I said before, I hope you get a chance to read this book, The Gravel Pit Kids. And it's in print. It's in a new print run right now, and you can find it in the libraries. You can find this one in the libraries, but the new one, the new print one, will be out. Well, it will be out, at least shipped soon, and but it can be ordered on Amazon if anybody wants to find it. And I can be reached on my Facebook fan page, author Geraldine Ryan-Lush. I can be reached on Twitter at @GRyanLush. If anybody wants to message me about anything to do with my work, my books. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my reading. Like I said before in one of my videos, I've written 16 books and, oh my goodness, I guess maybe 40 other published stories and articles. I guess probably it's even more than that. I've lost count anyway. And I have a lot more material that's just sitting there waiting to be put into the can, to be go down the pipeline, so to be published. This is, like I mentioned before, I've written serious material, I've written funny material and serious material. This is probably one of the most serious books I've ever written for children, young adults, or for any age really. There's a lot of themes, worthwhile themes, and I think it speaks to a lot of people, and there's a lot of messages here, humane societal messages that are positive for everyone, stereotyping and all that sort of thing, being kind to your fellow neighbor, and discriminatory things which do not make for peaceful living. So I hope you get a chance to peruse this book and read it through if you have a chance. So anyway, thank you for listening and tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope things are good for you in spite of all the worries. Thank you so much.